and then he started buying it not only in California, but he moved to Houston, grew up to about 15 units that he owns. And then he started, along the way there, he started Doorvest. And it's just a product that I think
they analyze the market, and they have 5 or 6 they plan today. Then they have relationships with wholesalers. They'll get a distressed property under contract. They'll go put their team in it to give an estimated ARV. And then they'll bring the options back to investors until the investor says, yep, this is the property that I want.
Like, how do I make sure that I myself am in a good financial state so that like me and my future family, like we don't have to worry about our finances.
I don't know what the split is on how many you have in Sacramento versus Houston, but can you talk about that and why you transitioned into a new market?
I had a bunch of like mistakes and school of hard knocks and whatnot along the way, but it kind of worked out for me.
Didn't you transition, become an agent, and then got a little bit into mortgages as well? Can you talk to us about that?
I failed my mortgage because like my bank accounts were super messy. There was like cash going in and out, and like they couldn't verify anything.
Welcome to the Weekly Juice Podcast, where we discuss all things real estate, personal finance, investing, entrepreneurship, and the many ways to achieve financial independence. We interview accomplished investors and with the goal that their stories inspire you to take control of your financial future. Here to get your creative juices flowing, while also documenting their own personal investing journeys, are your hosts, Corey Jacobson and Ryan Bevilacqua.
Welcome back to the Weekly Juice. As always, it's your boys, Ryan and Corey, here with another episode. Today we had an exciting episode. We had special guest Andrew Luong on the show. He is the CEO and founder of Doorvest. They are essentially an online platform that helps investors identify and secure their first property. It's kind of like an all-in-one hub, right? If say you have about 50 grand down or 50 grand in cash available, they'll go and find a property for you. They'll analyze the market, and they'll basically run the whole show for you behind the scenes.
Yeah. They'll help you with the funding. They'll help you with they'll actually buy the property and then sell it to you. So as long as you're hitting your potential returns, and they're available in several markets across the United States. Andrew's a real estate investor by trade. And then he started this tech kind of startup 7-8 years ago at this point, 2014, so 9 years ago. But Doorvest is a really cool product, and Andrew's a really cool guy. I mean, he actually was talking about his journey. He grew up in San Francisco. He wanted to be a doctor, and then he got into real estate investing. He started buying in San Francisco, and then in Sacramento, and then he started buying it not only in California, but he moved to Houston, grew up to about 15 units that he owns, and then he started along the way there, he started Doorvest. And it's just a product that I think really busy people that have money, like potentially people that are listening to our show that like trust other people to run the numbers, it could be a really cool fit for an all-in-one online place for you to go buy rental properties. And that's kind of their model. They have 350 doors under management. They'll manage it for you. They'll run the numbers for you. It sounds too good to be true, but Andrew breaks it down in a really succinct way that makes sense for somebody like, for example, like us. Now, we're real estate investors and we know how to run the numbers, but if we are working on building our podcast, we're working on our W-2 jobs, we're working on a couple other businesses, if we can build connections with a company like Doorvest, they can help you accumulate wealth on those long-term rentals based on the yields and the dollar value that you have available to put down.
Yeah, I don't think I did a great job of explaining it in the beginning, but essentially what Andrew's team goes and does, they analyze the market, and they have 5 or 6 they plan today. Then they have relationships with wholesalers. They'll get a distressed property under contract. They'll go put their team in it to give an estimated ARV, and then they'll bring the options back to investors until the investor says, yep, this is the property that I want. This is the renovations that I want to go for. And that's based on, let's just say like a $50,000 budget or whatever budget that
for the
investor
payment
gives Andrew. And then they send their renovations team in there, and they essentially burr the property. Andrew still has ownership, and then they transfer title over to the investor. That investor then gets a mortgage, and the property's theirs. And then Andrew's team manages it as well. So they have a really cool A to Z system where every step of the way it's taken care of for you. Now you can do it online at doorvest.com. It's not like Fundrise where you're buying into
No, you own the full property. Yeah.
It's your property. So it's a really cool model.
It's turnkey. And I think that's the cool part about it. It's like, it's really meant to be a turnkey model and bring it to you. And you're like, what returns are you trying to hit? What neighborhoods does it fit your criteria? What market fits your criteria? And it kind of like caters it to you. and they're still kind of in like this second phase, they call it. They're starting to grow pretty fast. I just think it's cool to talk to the guy who's like the head of the snake, him and another partner, to see how his mind works and how he thinks. And he's a real estate investor himself. So he really understands what other investors are looking for and what busy people, how they can accumulate wealth without diving all the way in themselves and being the ones that fix up the property and everything. So I thought it was a great product.
I couldn't agree more. With that, let's bring in Andrew to let us know how it's done. Andrew, officially welcome to the Weekly Juice podcast. Corey and I are so excited to have you on the show, man. We've done some research on you, heard a lot of podcasts that you've been on, and you've been doing incredible things with your company, Doorvest. So we are thrilled to have you on the show, man, and excited to share your story. So thanks so much for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys. Fan of the pod. I think you've had a number of our friends or people that we've looked up to, and I think we just chatted about this earlier. So excited and grateful to be one of your guests.
Absolutely. Well, Andrew, if you could take us through your investing journey here, where you started and how you got involved in real estate in the beginning, and then, scale us all the way up to how you started your company.
Oh man, I wonder how far back we should go.
Just as a young boy.
Yeah.
No, you don't have to go that far
young
back.
California boy. No, I'd probably say it goes back somewhere in college. I know that the two of you guys met in college as well, but yeah, in college, I went to college, was studying chemistry at the time on like this track to try to be a doctor. Unfortunately, and probably fortunate for the world, I wasn't any good at it. And so quickly got out of that. But I think along the way, like growing up, my family faced a bunch of financial hardship. So it was quickly imprinted in my mind, like, how do I make sure that I myself am in a good financial state so that like me and my future family, like we don't have to worry about our finances. And so that kind of led me to Startup Land. And I worked a 9 to 5, mainly in sales. First it was like at startups and then some big companies and whatnot. But as I got a job, began to save, that's when I was like, okay, well, it would take me forever to earn a lot of money. Where's kind of like the shortcut to this? And probably around that time, I was also, I don't know if you guys read this book, but The 4-Hour Workweek by Tim Ferriss. Yeah, I'd say the name is a bit corny, and I think it was intentionally as such. But the concept around how do you sort of work in your lifestyle so that you could live a good life today versus having to defer retirement really caught me. And so those roads led me to real estate, where it was like Googling, and it was like, how do you generate like passive income, and how do you like build wealth, and how do you put your money to work so that you don't have to work for your money, but your money works for you, and all of these concepts that I think you guys all went into.
I think everyone's been at the end of that Google search, Andrew. Don't worry. You weren't the only one. So you found it. That's awesome.
Yeah. And then at the time, I think that the naivete was kind of the one that got me into real estate really quick. Like I was like, okay, like I could run the math on this thing. You could see how much you're paying for it and all of your expenses, and you could know how much rent that you're going to get, and you could figure out ways to forecast all of that. And so that led me to my first investment home. It was a 3-bedroom, 1 bath, the absolute cheapest home in Sacramento, California, which is like a 2-hour drive away from me. I was living in, and still I'm living in, San Francisco. And so this was 2014. And so bought that home. It was for all of $96,000. And I remember at the time I was like, damn, this guy that sold it to me, he bought it out of the bottom of the last recession for $40,000. This must be the top of the market. But anyways, that was the first home, 3-bedroom, 1 bath, for $96,000 in Sacramento. 1 kind of led to 2 led to 5 led to 10, and then at some point, kind of at the peak of it, around 15 or so. And yeah, had a bunch of like mistakes and school of hard knocks and whatnot along the way, but it kind of worked out for me.
Yeah, love it. So I want to talk about your scaling there from the 1 to the 15 and kind of the strategies you used to get there, because if you think of San Francisco or California in general now, you're thinking like, I can't even buy real estate in that area, right? You bought at a great time. I'm sure that $95,000 property is probably worth a hell of a lot more than $95,000 these days. But I'm curious, like, did you just save up more money because you had a high paying job? And were these all loans that you took out in your personal name? Or did you do the Burr method and recycle money against the existing properties? Like, what was your strategy to start to scale it there?
Yeah. I'd probably say each home had its own story. But maybe we'll start with the first one where it was the 96,000. So the funny story was at the time I got so excited about real estate. I found two homes owned by the same owner. Both were on the market, and I was like, I'll take both of them. And I signed two purchase contracts for both of them. At the time, I'd never gotten a mortgage or anything. And honestly, I probably didn't even have enough down payment, even if I could figure out how to get the mortgage. But I was just like so excited about finally finding that home. But anyway, clearly, I didn't get both. I was only able to get one. And the reason was because I failed my mortgage because like my bank accounts were super messy. There was like cash going in and out, and like they couldn't verify anything. And so how I ended up funding that 96,000 was like I had this contract for a home that I felt high conviction about. I was like, damn, how am I going to fund it? So went around to family and friends, and this was like the first time I ever raised capital in my life. But I was like, I think I could pay you more than you get from your savings account. At the time, your savings account was probably like 1% or something, and I was offering like 8% or something. And then ended up circling the 96, bought it with all cash, but bought that home with all cash. And then like, because I had to, figured out how to cash out refi. And so held on to that home for 6 months, got the seasoning, and then was able to cash out refi. I think it was 132 or somewhere within a range of 130. So 80% loan to value, got out all of my cash, paid back everyone with interest. They were super happy. I had no money in the home. And so still saved my first down payment from last time. And then that's kind of how home number two would have happened.
Got it. Awesome. And then you're able to scale from there, which is cool. I want to stay within your real estate portfolio, but I actually find it really interesting. So you started out trying to be a doctor. Is that what you said in the beginning? A doctor. And then you said that didn't work out for you. So you chose real estate, but you're also in like the tech world too, which are like three really different sectors. And I'm curious, like how it came to be that you got from the healthcare to the real estate, and then how tech kind of blends into that. And we'll continue to talk about your portfolio, but I didn't want to gloss over that because you have your hands in a number of different things, and it's hard enough for Ryan and I to figure out one lane. So,
yeah. Well, yeah, I never figured out the healthcare route. It was very aspirational. It was like, okay, well, what's like a clear path to like a good job? And so there was actually some underlinings of financial security there, because it was like, how do you make a decent salary? And what's like the clearest path to that? And so like healthcare seemed like a good path. Clearly, I was terrible at it. And again, the world probably thanks me that I wasn't able to make it through. But so that's how I got there. And then from there, getting into tech, and specifically tech sales, was kind of the role. I got into tech. I found that I liked sales. I consider myself like borderline introvert. My friends tell me that I'm an extrovert, but I find myself referring to myself as an introvert. But I enjoy talking to people. I enjoy sort of getting creative. And then from a financial security standpoint, like sales was something where it's like, I think I could outwork a lot of people, and sales is oftentimes commission driven. So this seems like a great way for me to be able to make more cash than like a typical 9 to 5. And so from there, that kind of led to my down payment, and then ultimately the real estate stuff.
Very cool. And then also at some point, didn't you transition, become an agent, and then got a little bit into mortgages as well? Can you talk to us about that?
Oh yeah. So I guess that's the theme that we're surfacing here, is that got my hands into too many jars, but along the way. So at some point I was a novice, and then from one home, and then two, and then maybe at some point when it was like 4 or 5 homes. Like the first home I bought when I was around 20, so before I could buy a drink at a bar, so at some point, people started coming to me, especially like coworkers and friends and whatnot, when I had a handful of homes, and they're like, "Show me how to get started." And so it was everything from like referring them to like Bigger Pockets podcasts and articles and links to here's an agent that I work with, to hey, maybe I could be your agent, to hey, maybe I could also be your loan officer, and whatnot. So that was kind of all side hustles that I got to along the way.
Got it. Cool. It's interesting. I mean, you mentioned that there's a theme, but like, kind of trying a bunch of things. That's really what entrepreneurs do. Like they get their hand in a couple things here and there. They pivot. They try something new until something clicks, and that's what's worked for us too. I mean, a lot of what we've done have been sales related, but like, I my first job out of school was I was sold medical benefits, and I could not have hated it anymore. But it's something like that was like, well, I can check that off the box as something I really don't like to do, right? At least it gave me that, and it gave me the experience and the lack of, oh, I don't feel rejection anymore. Like, because I had no clue what I was even talking about. So for people to say no to me, it wasn't like, I guess I can't really be offended. Well, I wouldn't say yes to somebody who had no clue what they were talking about either. So that thick skin. And then, you grow and you learn and you change. I want to pull it back to your portfolio though, because it takes some real guts to be able to scale this thing. And I'm wondering, at what point did you take your portfolio from the California, Sacramento area and then start buying in Houston? Because I know you have some properties there too. I don't know what the split is on how many you have in Sacramento versus Houston, but can you talk about that and why you transitioned into a new market?
Yeah. Actually, if I could comment on your last points
please.
too, I thought they were great. But like, I mean, number one, like sales, honestly, I still think was like one of the best possible jobs for me early on. Of course, you learn how to face rejection, and like I was cold calling and I was trying to sell deals and all of that. And obviously in sales, you get people saying no and slamming the door on your face all the time. And I think it really taught you that like, you don't take it personally. It's really just about a numbers game. And at some point it works, and then you keep doing more of it and it'll work again. The second piece was around like just trying things. Oh man, I don't know if it's just me, but certainly has been my experience where it's like, I find something interesting, I'll try it, and then maybe I'm good at it, or I find some early success, which is like buying my first home. And then I try more of it, and then I have more success. And then at some point you look back and you're like, damn, like you've come a really long way. But it's not because I plan to be here this whole time. It's because I kept putting one step in front of the other and kind of going from there.
Yeah, well, to go off that, I'll let Ryan jump in. It's true. I don't mean to hog it, but I that struck something in me, because people are always like, follow your passion, right? You got to follow your passion, like right off the bat. And I think that it really depends what your passion is, but it's also like, what makes people passionate? Being successful. Like that's what helped me. Like if I'm looked at as a good person, somebody that is knowledgeable, somebody can trust, and then somebody who's successful, quote unquote, air quotes, in their field, that makes me happy. That makes me want to do more of it. So it's not that it doesn't matter what it is, but like becoming better and gaining more confidence is also can create a passion in something that you didn't even think you were passionate about. Like, Gary Vee says all the time to go like start a peanut butter farm, but like if you don't think you can sustain that and grow it and become a quote unquote thought leader or an action leader in that area, then like maybe you should do something you're good at, and then hopefully it becomes your passion, and maybe they're two in the same.
Right. Yeah. I mean, we should probably move on back to your initial question, because I derailed this. But I mean, I think I very much like I wrote an article some years ago where it's like, don't follow your passions. And it's not because I don't think one should work on things that they care about. And in fact, I think they do. But you don't find passion, in my opinion, from like laying on a beach in Mexico and one day you're just like, oh my gosh, I'm passionate about X. It's really about trying something, getting better at it, doing more of it, finding some success, and that kind of leads to passion one day. I do think it's important to work on things that you're passionate on, or else you just don't have the energy to be able to wake up every day and really contribute to it. But anyways, so back to your question about kind of getting to Texas and Houston and whatnot. So to the theme of trying things and some things didn't work. I think I mentioned earlier that the first home that I bought was the absolute cheapest home in Sacramento at the time. And so you guys have been in real estate for a while now, and you've had plenty of guests. It's like, once you're looking at the absolute cheapest homes, you tend to be in tougher neighborhoods, lower quality homes, more turnover. I mean, i.e. war zones and whatnot. And so on that same home, I don't own it anymore. And it's because it was just facing turnover and issues and just after like over and over. But on that same home, one time I had a turnover. And so the resident vacated. I came to the home, and there was like a homeless person that was cooking on the stove there. And I was like, excuse me, like, what are you doing here? And they like screamed at me and they told me to like get out of their house. And I was like, holy crap. And so that should give you a sense of like the quality of the homes. That led me to Texas, where it was like, okay, for a similar purchase price, I could get a great home in a solid neighborhood, similar rental income, strong upside potential, etc. And I just wasn't able to access that in Sacramento at the time.
Wow, that's an incredible story. Actually, I love that.
It makes sense though, because like we've looked at properties in areas and we're like, wow, I can't believe you can buy this property for $50,000. It's going to cash flow $2,000 a month. It's going to be amazing. And then we we go there and we look, and I'm like, ain't no way someone's going to pay to live here. And even if they do, how long are they going to live here before something else happens and they're going to move? And it's like,
it takes going there though, because it's funny. And I'll tell for all the novices out there who are going and researching properties, and they're like, oh my God, I can't believe this one is so cheap. This is amazing. Wait till you not only see pictures, get into the neighborhood and get a vibe for the neighbors and the houses down the street from them. Because we took a trip up to, I think it was Cleveland or Columbus, one of the two cities. And
that was in Cleveland.
And we were driving through. We're like, oh, this is great. We can get a quadplex. And I forget, it was just so cheap. And
20 grand.
Yeah, it was very cheap. I thought it was 20.
Wow.
It was very close. So, but then we drove.
Oh no, you're right.
We were afraid to drive down the street because all the tenants were outside on their deck, like with the pit bulls, and just like I felt like they were guarding the street. I'm like, dude, we genuinely we can't invest here if we won't walk down the street here. And so there's a lot to that. But I would just say for people who are looking around, it's like go check out the areas that you're looking to invest in. It's hard to invest out of state. People do it all the time, right? It's amazing. But if you can get a feel for the neighborhood, especially when it's your first one, so you can go through the motions the right way and you don't get stuck into something that you can't
or
control.
connect with somebody who's boots on the ground
exactly,
too, right?
Exactly.
Like it doesn't have to be you, i.e. and we can talk about your product, right? Doorvest in the later segments of the show, because you do it all of kind of virtually trusting other people that are experts. But go ahead. I didn't know if you want to.
Actually, yeah, that was kind of where I wanted to go to next, is because Andrew, you've mentioned, you've talked about yourself being an agent, overall entrepreneur, but tech side, sales side, all encompassing, right? And then at some point you found there was a need in the market and you decided to create something of your own. So can you take us through the inception of Doorvest and talk us through the services that you currently offer? And I think it's going to be a big hit, especially for some of our younger investors. When I say younger, I don't mean by age, I just mean by experience and people that are looking to get in the game, especially for us. I know when we were first starting out, this is something exactly what we were looking for. So take us through the story, and we'd love to hear more.
Yeah. Same. I mean, the product I think was very much designed for when you guys were starting out, when I was starting out, et cetera. But it happened, I'd say, really organically as well. Like along my personal journey, call it 5-7 years or whatever it was, like as I began to accumulate my portfolio, naturally, and I'm sure you guys get this from your friends all the time. It's like, hey, I have 40 or 50 grand saved up. I have a good day job. I heard you do real estate. Like, can you show me how to get started? And like every single time it was like, great. Like, I'm super excited. It still gets me excited to just say those words. Like, here's like links to Bigger Pockets. Here's how you like research markets. Here's how you find an agent. Here's how you write offers. Here's what you got to do if you need to negotiate offers, mortgage, title, insurance, like just the whole 9 yards. And I would send them off on their way. And then this happened like clockwork. Like 3 or 4 months later, I'd bump into them at like a friend's house or like at a restaurant or something. And I'd be like, how'd you do? And like every single time, people would say the same thing, like, couldn't get started. Can you do this for me? And so at some point, I think after 60 conversations or so, something, the light bulb kind of went off that it's like, there seems to be something here. And so the earlier iterations of that same thought process was like, oh, maybe I could become a real estate agent and then I could help facilitate the sale for them. Maybe I could be a mortgage loan officer. And then I did some sort of like raise debt from people to fund projects, et cetera, too. But ultimately, nothing sort of fulfilled the end to end like the concept of Doorvest. And so Doorvest at a high level makes it easy for people to buy and own an investment home online. Kind of how we do that is we'll start with an investor, probably similar to you guys or people, your listeners on the show, and kind of their investment objectives. So how much did they have saved for a down payment? What sort of returns or cap rates were they hoping for? And what's kind of their risk profile? Like, are they okay for this war zone home that cash flows, like you said, $2,000 a month for like 50 grand all in or whatever? Or are we really looking for something that's reliable in a good neighborhood, stable, that sort of thing? And then from there, we kind of make it happen. So we'll find a home based on their criteria. We'll buy it. We'll renovate. We'll lease and manage the home. So kind of end to end, customer buys a home back from us. And then as they close and take title, we'll manage it. So kind of end to end. And then lastly, hoping that where we position ourselves is that after a customer buys their first home, have a great experience, generate the rental incomes that we promise, et cetera. Hopefully they come back and sort of add more homes under management as they build out their portfolio.
First of all, incredible model. It's to me, if you're speaking to, let's call it 4 years ago, Ryan, I would say, take my money, dude, because truly there's so many steps to this that you get overwhelmed just as all your friends are. And I'm just thinking back to the party. Hey, how'd you do? And they're in the same spot. All of our friends are in the same boat. We actually are we're finalizing a similar business model on the short-term rental side, and pretty much almost like identical, not online, but it's more so like, hey, we have a whole team that you'll work with, right? And then the thought is that if you have a good experience, you'll come back and you'll work with our management company. Now, I want to talk through.
Yeah, that's like all the way through. Like, just like you said, we just don't have the platform, lending, management, agent, everything. So yeah, I just wanted to throw that.
Yeah, we have all the pieces.
Yeah,
and we're gonna roll it out in a future episode. But I did want to tease it a little bit because it's actually funny that we're talking to you. It's very synonymous. However, I do want to talk about your side of the business, where it's how do you, when I say your side of the business, I mean like internal, behind the scenes. How did you put this thing together? Because I'm thinking of, you have to go find these properties, buy them, and then just hope to God that someone's going to come buy it from you and have a good experience and meet those numbers. And so we could talk from everything from like finding the deal, analyzing it, what do you want to call it? Rehabbing it, and then getting it on the market. Talk us through the whole stages behind the scenes and like how you knew this was going to be successful.
Yeah. I'd say like, if we zoomed out a bit, and people ask us this all the time, it's like, it's not like, and you and I talked before we hopped on the show before too, but like Justin and I, my co-founder Justin and I, like we've been friends for years now, well before Doorvest. And so always kind of workshopping and hacking on random ideas and business ideas and things of that nature. But for Doorvest specifically, it was never that we wanted to build a big business and make boatloads of money, and therefore we wanted to start Doorvest. It was more, there feels like there's a consumer need here that we could help. And so maybe we could build a platform around that. And so that was kind of the foundation of it. And so from there, like, to your question of like, there's all these different moving pieces that we have to stitch together. That's like the pain and the work that myself and the team go through day in, day out. And so I guess starting again, I think that the main sort of insight is we wanted to start with sort of the consumer and what they were looking for specifically before we even did our side of the work. And so having a clear understanding of like, Ryan, like, are you, like, how much did you have for real estate? Is it 200K? Do you want to buy one home with cash, or do you want to buy 4 homes or something in between, et cetera? And then from there, we'll sort of curate the end home for you. And so from there, then we'll go into the market. We'll suggest homes based on our underwriting, our criteria. Maybe we don't want to go into war zone because here's X, Y, and Z reasons why. Maybe you do want to, and then we'll just go there for you, and then kind of make it happen from that.
Andrew, I'm curious how tailored this is to the individual. I know that's what you're talking about, having the consumer in mind, but like, are you like asking, and people can check it out on the platform, but are you asking like, hey, okay, I have $50,000. Are you saying I can go to a market in Cleveland, Ohio? I can go to a market in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. I can go to a market in Sedona, Arizona. Like, can you just, can you do this anywhere? Are there specific markets that you like to drive people towards? And then off of that, how do you develop relationships with the right people in those markets to make it happen?
Yeah. So the end vision, give us a couple more years, is any market in the US, maybe international, that sort of thing. For now, I'd say that the main constraint is so long-term passive investing is kind of our general theme. And so like I love the idea of short-term rentals. Our customers ask us about it all the time. Maybe we could send it your guys' way whenever you get your setup up. But it's just not passive enough for kind of our investment thesis. And then so long-term passive and generates some income too. And so Austin, Miami, etc. probably wouldn't be a good market, given it's really difficult to generate some income. And so that's kind of the main constraints for us from a business level. And then from there, it's kind of what markets are we operational in today, as we continue to add more markets later. So as of right now, we're in Houston. Houston was our first market. It happened because the first 2 Doorvest homes were Andrew homes that we were putting through the platform to validate the proof of concept. Then Houston, Dallas, San Antonio, Atlanta, Oklahoma City, and then 2 Ohio markets, Columbus and Cincinnati, are kind of the markets to date. And so I'd say middle of the pack rental home markets. You can still get some yield. They're not hyper focused on yield, but they're also not really small markets, et cetera.
Totally. Yeah. So I noticed, and I was looking on your website before we talked here, it looks like that, your company is essentially serving as you're taking a management fee, right? You're taking a 10%. Is that how you generate your revenue for the company? Like, because it seems like there's so much work that goes into this entire process, but you're making it really affordable to the consumer. As like, you'd be paying 10% if you're from California and you're investing in Ohio, you'd be paying that 10% anyway, and you got to do all the work up front. So is that your model of how to like you're taking that management fee?
Yeah, you should tell that to our board. They would get a kick out of it. They always tell me that we do way too much work and we don't make enough money. But realistically speaking, we target about a 5% markup on the homes. And so the average home is about $200K. We aim to make about 10 grand upfront. And then after that, it's the 10% management fees. And so that the upfront fluctuates depending on the home, the quality of our renovations, that sort of thing. And then it's a pretty standard property management fee ongoing.
So let me ask you this, and I don't know if you have the stats offhand, but I'm curious about this. How many assets or properties under management do you guys currently have now? And do you have a stat line of how many like successful endeavors you've been through? I mean this is like, hey, have any of these failed? Where to the point where investors like, hey, I haven't made my money that was promised, like they weren't underwritten properly and they want to sell it back to you, or they, there's a customer service aspect to this too. So yep. I'm just curious about the hiccups, because within business there are sometimes a couple of those.
Oh yeah. Let's see. So about 350 homes under management at this point. And I'd say our main success criteria is repeat sales. And so I guess from like a survey standpoint, our customers have 86% have mentioned that they want to buy a subsequent home. We ask them after they buy their first home. And then 18% to date have purchased a subsequent home. So like home 2, home 3, et cetera. The hope and the intention is to grow that over over time. And I think that's how we build a big business on the back end, is like aligning our incentives with that of a long-term focused passive investor. In terms of like customers that have moved off because for whatever reason the expectations weren't set correctly, our numbers were off, etc. I don't have the numbers off the cuff, but it was less than 1% of our total customers. And so hopefully we continue to keep that up for many years to come. But it's also
that's a great number, dude. And I put you on the hot seat on that one. So that's my bad. No, hey, you wrote out.
No, all good. Yeah,
that was good.
But that's part of it. Like, I think that anybody listening, for anybody listening, if you don't make mistakes in business, if you were to come on here, Andrew, and say we're perfect, it's never happened, I would literally not believe you. Like, because there's no secret formula. And like we were talking about this the other day with just some of the ventures that we're in, like, as many cool opportunities as we've presented to our audience, there's always some people that are like, this isn't for me, or this doesn't work. And like, it's just, that's okay. Like that's your tolerance and your level. So I think it's, that's a great number there to have it at less than 1%. So it's pretty cool.
It's solid. No, I mean, come on, 99% success rate. So, question for you too.
I mean, I'll caveat it that we're so early on, right? Like we've only been around for about 3 or so years. Let's give us a little bit more time.
Sure.
Hopefully we can prove ourselves too. We're still trying to improve and get better.
Well, 350 properties under management too. That's a good. I mean, that you're doing great. That's all I got to say. And it's inspiring to hear your story. I also want to note here, question this. It's like, hey, say someone comes in, they don't have a big budget. They're like, hey, Andrew, I really want to get into real estate. I don't have a massive budget right now. Can you connect me with someone else that's interested in real estate? Do you partner people up to get deals done? I'm just curious because I'm kind of selfishly thinking about Corey and I. It's like, hey, we have so much going on right now. We're not currently looking at the market like far away markets, right? And underwriting deals, finding stuff. I might have cash and say, hey, Andrew, I have 25 grand, I have 50 grand. Can you pair me up with some other gentleman or woman in your network that I can take down a deal with as long as it fits my criteria? Do you guys do that as well?
Yeah, not at this point, but you gave me some good ideas and validated some ideas that we've been tossing around too. But that's definitely kind of like, I don't know. I'd probably say we're probably on version 2 or so of Doorvest as a company. I think this will happen in version 3. Right now, we've been like hyper focused on 50 grand equals one home is kind of the general concept, because 50 grand and then you get a mortgage and then you end up with like a 200K home or so. But in the future, it's like, okay, can we offer a product that's even more passive where maybe Doorvest owns part of the home and then you and others and some other random Doorvest customers all chip in bits and pieces, and then we kind of operate and we own a portion of it. That's definitely been something that we've considered. Maybe also like a fund model or some attempt at that could be interesting too. But to answer your question, not to date, but definitely something that we're considering.
I have 2 more quick ones for you. One's is real quick. What is the best market that you've seen? I know you guys you're about in 5 or 6 markets, something like that, maybe a little bit more. What's the best market you're currently in now? If you had 2 people wanting to jump in, say, hey, like this is the one that I think has the biggest growth trajectory. Whereas it's not strictly cash flow. I'm thinking that appreciation will come into play here. If you had to pick one out of your 5 or 6 that you have.
This is like having 6 kids and choosing which one is your favorite.
We don't have to worry about that. So that's why we put you on the spot.
Yeah. I think that really like Atlanta as a market. It's like really heated. A bunch of the institutions love Atlanta as well. Probably part of the reason why it's super heated. I think if you could find something for a decent price, I think that there's still strong upside potential. The population trends are very clear. The corporate trends are super clear as well. And then just like the quality of the neighborhood that you're getting for like quote unquote affordable home, I think is still really awesome. So that's I need to save up a little bit more down payment, but whenever I do, I'm going to pick up in Atlanta.
Cool. It's great to know. I was going to ask you about that too. Like, what do you think your real estate investing journey yourself has taught you about running the company? Like what obviously there are parallels. It's your business. If you own property, you're a business owner. If you don't look at it that way, then it's going to be potentially tough sailing for you. So I'm curious, what about building your own portfolio has translated really well into running your company?
Yeah. Probably say it has to do something with focusing on, things that you're good at, things that you're finding success at, and therefore you feel passion or compelled to do it, etc. Like I've always been very obsessed with sort of growth and how do we scale this thing and that sort of thing. And so in sort of my personal real estate business, like, and owning the rentals, making sure that the taxes were good was not fun for me. Making sure like the receipts lined up and the expenses were all checked out, and like that stuff is very important, but it just wasn't something that was like something I was particularly compelled to. And so it was always like, how do I find someone to work with that was good at bookkeeping, etc. And then that's kind of how I feel very about sort of the day to day at Doorvest too. Like for instance, things like running OKRs, like objectives and key results. I'm not particularly good at sort of setting those and like making, holding teams accountable and pressing timelines, that sort of thing. And so finding awesome team members to kind of fill in the gaps so that I can focus on the stuff I do feel enjoyment in doing, such as salesy stuff and spending time with customers and partners and like hang out with you guys on a podcast, etc.
Yeah, I would say that we are very similar in that aspect. I don't really care for I know the numbers are probably the number one part of real estate, which is you got to find someone on your team that A, likes those things, and B, is good at them too. But also like bookkeeping and all that. Like it's just, some people are numbers people, some people are not. I'm on the creative side. I like building things and just having my little spin on them. I really don't like being in the weeds that much on the back end and like nurturing the numbers. I kind of hate that. Yep. Corey's great at that. And I don't know if he likes it, but I don't know if I'm great. He's better at that than me. Let's say that. Okay. And that I think is something that we have to bring someone into. We use a lot of programs and things, but down the line, it's like, hey, we need an administrator, right? To handle a lot of things that we don't want to do, to free up our time. But I also want to talk to your boots on the ground people too, because I think that's a huge part of this business. Now, 350 properties under management, let's just say call it 5-6 cities. How are you building these teams to ensure that when people come in and buy this property, that you're going to have a long trajectory of great management over time? And not, there's always that thing that is in the back of investors' mind. It's like, hey, are they gouging me for management? Are they working with a friend or something like that so they can charge extra, and just like they don't care about my property as much as I care about my property? That's what we always think about when we think about property managers. I'm just curious on your take on that, and if you've had any rebuttals when people come to you.
Yeah, it's a really important piece, and like, here's what the thesis that Justin and I had when we were getting started with Doorvest is like, how do we build all of these incentives into the structure of the business early on? Because once we're up and running, and now we're about 60 people, and as you mentioned, across many different states, et cetera, like, it's easy to lose sight of some of these sort of details for the business, especially when everyone's running at full speed and they're managing 100 homes with like a bunch of tickets, and there's like all these issues and things of that nature. So anyways, to answer that question, I think a lot of it boils down to the incentive structure. So again, our stated incentive structure is, how do we get the consumer into their first ever home? So 70% of our customers are first time homeowners. Like they've never owned a house before, and this is their first ever home. And then from there, how do we turn them into repeat owners, which is the 18% stat from earlier? And I could guarantee you, if we do a terrible job, or we sold you a lemon, or like your toilet costs $600, like to replace, I doubt that you'd come back. So anyways, that's to say, we wanted to start with that piece, and then all of the mechanics of the business then flow into that. And so from like we call it our customer success team. It's like a property management team, but like with an add-on. Like their focus is like, how do we minimize customer churn, which is kind of the 1% stat, and then also, how do we stay close to the consumer and make sure that they're happy so that they come back and buy more homes from us? And so one function into that for them is like, okay, we should manage our our general contractors that are getting sent out, and we should make sure that this is actually an emergency versus like I don't know, the faucet is leaking and we could wait for it later, that sort of thing. That's kind of like the methodology behind it. I could guarantee you we could do a much better job, and so that's an area that we're definitely working on day to day.
Sure. And sorry, last one from me, just on the same token here, topic. Do you have a like through Doorvest? If I say we invest with you, we buy property, and let's just call it Columbus, right? That's one that's jumping out to me. Or
sounds great. I'll sign you up for one.
Great. Yeah. We might be going to Atlanta then if you want to put us on the list. But I will say within that, do you log into Doorvest and that's where we can manage our properties and like we send payment and all, not send payment, but the deal with like manage tenants, manage maintenance requests, all that stuff. We have a property management software that we use for our long-term properties that we love, but I'm just curious if Doorvest does it all under one roof or if it's outsourced.
Yeah. So similar to the theme that we talked about earlier, it's like we've bit off a lot in order to deliver on this end-to-end experience for customers. And so wherever we could find like a partner to work with or like buy software versus starting from scratch on our own, et cetera, we try to do that. And so from an owner standpoint, that's definitely all within Doorvest. And then from a resident standpoint, we buy off-the-shelf software, and then we kind of get the two to integrate with each other. The longer-term vision is like what we already have is like you're able to access your home. You could see the rental income. You could pull statements, pull reports, tee stuff up for taxes, et cetera. The longer-term vision is like, okay, with all this data that we have here and all the information we know about your finances, et cetera, like maybe we could suggest when it'll be right for you to buy your next home. And maybe you can fill out the mortgage all entirely there, and then you can have a home teed up, et cetera. The hope is this becomes the hub of all of your personal finances over time.
What I thought was interesting, Andrew, about what you said in the last couple of minutes is that you really have to create a buy box, not for the properties, but for your customers too. And that's what's really important, because I think about this all the time. I've gotten out of a place of being concerned whether it costs me $150 or $275 to replace something, right? Because I've realized as the consumer or the investor looking at it, how can I go and make more money? And how can I go and expand my own journey and network to make my dollar per hour $5,000 an hour versus worrying about if something's going to cost $17 or $58. And I think that your end user is probably in that realm too. You want somebody coming in that makes $100,000, $200,000, more, which would be great. But if that person is concerned about, well, does it cost, $18 or $68 to replace a specific item, they should probably be the handyman that's going and doing it themselves. They're not really your target market, or you're going to have headaches that are crazy, right? And this used to be, I was never at that point, right? But I was in the beginning of our property management journey when we were having, when we hired one, I always thought to myself, man, does it really cost $378 to replace for an hour or so to do this? And then I thought back and I'm like, no, well, I don't have to worry about it because it costs me more money to call the contractor, set up the tenant to be there, and then the tenant doesn't show up when they say they were going to be, or they forgot they'd locked the door and they were asleep. And it's like, Jesus, like, can we just not, I don't want to deal with this. Like, I'm going to pay somebody else to deal with it. So it's all of that kind of adding up is like figuring out who your end customer is. And I think it's somebody who they have money. They don't want to focus on real estate investing. They want to build wealth. They want Doorvest to help them build the wealth, or they would go and burr themselves. Right. So I think that's important to note there.
Yeah, that's 100% right. Which is like, back to kind of the theme from earlier. It's like our focus is on passive investors. And so I generally think of a passive investor as not someone that wants to optimize for $17 versus $58, like you mentioned before. I would say though, this is kind of where I get really excited about when we get some real meaningful scale, call it 1,000, 3,000, 5,000 homes under management, et cetera, because from there, it could be someone's full-time job just to optimize the difference between $250 for a toilet and $400. And of course, if we could etch these like hundreds of dollars out, it produces a better return for our end customer too. But it'll take us some time to get to some of that scale.
That's awesome though. No, I was asking a lot of nitty gritty questions because, as I mentioned, we're kind of doing a similar thing. Well, really the same thing, but on the short term basis, right? We have people that are already in play there. We're just kind of jumping in on the marketing side. But I want to ask you if you can just take me through the investor journey from day one. So what I mean by that is, say you have an individual that comes in and says, "Hey, Andrew, I have $100,000, sir. Let's go 50. Sorry, because that'll give you the $200,000 house. I have 50 grand. I'm ready to go." Take us through the steps of how they work with you and your company and all the way up until closing.
Yeah. So they come in with 50 grand. They'll talk to one of our client partners. From there. Again, we'll learn more like what type of home are you optimizing for? Why? What sort of, here's kind of a sampling of Doorvest homes, and here are some of the pros and cons of each. Here's one that's like newer, but in a slightly lower quality neighborhood for the same price. And here's like a nicer home. Maybe this is a 300K home. Have you thought about a 300K home? Or have you thought about a 150K home for whatever reason, et cetera? And then we'll use that, like you mentioned earlier, to carve out a customer buy box. And we actually talk about this concept a lot internally. There's effectively the customer buy box, and then there's and then that leads to the Doorvest buy box, because there's some other parameters we're looking for as a company, such as we don't operate in, I don't know, Phoenix, for instance, at least not today. But anyways, we'll carve out the customer buy box. From there, we'll go to market. So the majority of our inventory / supply, we're getting off market through wholesalers. And I'm sure you guys are familiar with those, but they're kind of doing all of the marketing, and then they'll tee up contracts to us. Usually these homes are pretty banged up and need some heavy renovations. We'll send out one of our in-house GCs to estimate on the home. So they'll walk the home, they'll take the pictures, they'll build out the scope to get it into Doorvest rental quality standard. We'll take all like that entire package, so the pictures, the scope, and then the final purchase price, which is the ARV after we do all of our work, bring it back to the customer with our pro forma and sort of the forecasted financials. And we're like, are you in? Like, does this meet what you were looking for? If the consumer's like, no, that's fine. We'll ask them why. That'll help us refine our search going forward. And then we'll keep going until they say yes. Once the investor with the 50 grand says yes, we'll ask them to sign an LOI for the home. Then we'll buy the home. We'll do the renovations. We'll lease it out. And then we'll begin management. From there, the home is rental hardened. It's also income generating. We'll bring that back to the consumer. They'll close on their mortgage, because with 50 grand, you'll most likely get a mortgage, or you have to get a mortgage. They'll close on their mortgage. They'll take full title. And then we just serve as a property management company ongoing. And then pretty basic property management pieces from there.
That's amazing.
Thank you that was a great question, by the way. And thank you for painting the picture, because I think, when you tell people, yeah, like you can do this completely online, your team is really out there, boots on the ground, doing all the work and bringing the products right to the end user. So it sounds awesome. Do you want to go into the core 4 here?
Let's do it.
Okay, cool. So Andrew, same 4 questions we ask most of our guests, not all of them, if we can get to it. And it's our favorite segment here. So the first question is, you're a real estate investor, you're an entrepreneur. What is your favorite book on either end that has helped propel you in your journey towards the pursuit of financial freedom and kind of where you are now?
Yeah, I've said this a couple. Can I cheat and say like 2?
Sure.
Oh yeah, cheat all the way, dude. Say 3. Who cares?
Yeah. I'd probably say the first one I say all the time. I mentioned it earlier too, but the 4-hour work week was like fundamentally changed the way that I think about life and money, etc. Like, to be clear, I work way more than 4 hours. Probably like a good chunk more than 40 hours too.
I love Tim Ferriss, Andrew, but I don't know anybody who works 4 hours. I need to meet that person. I'm sure there are people that do, but I think it's the mindset that gets you into like at least working what you want to work on. And you can definitely scale back, but go ahead, continue.
Yeah, totally. So I thought that was a really good one to really think about, like your cash flows as a human today, and like really be thoughtful about what exactly do you want in your life? Like, do you really want that new red Ferrari? If so, pencil it in and then work towards it. But probably most people don't. And then it actually gives them some precision on how much cash flow they really need to live a happy life. And then probably the other one is a business book, 0 to 1. Really talks about sort of like building differentiated businesses. And there's some of the strategy and the thought processes behind taking something new and bring it to market.
Cool. Second question is, if you had an additional $100,000 of discretionary income, Corey and Ryan cut you a check today, tax-free. Here you go.
Sounds great.
How are you using it, investing it, spending it? You know, you can think of it like a pie chart. If you want to dump it into one thing, that's fine. But we're just always intrigued to hear how different investors do different things.
Yeah. 50K goes towards the Doorvest home. That's kind of like the safe. And this is actually what I do with my money now is like, I'll like do the basic stuff like the 401k, the index funds, etc. And then whenever I accumulate enough down payment, I'll go buy another Doorvest home, etc. And by the way, I'm just on the marketplace like everyone else. Nothing special for me from this side. So 50K goes there. Maybe sub 5K goes, this is assuming we already paid.
You want to plan another vacation or something? You're like, I would take some of it, you know, little.
Yeah. I mean, this is also assuming that you guys paid taxes for me too. So
yeah, we did.
Yeah, we already. Yeah,
thank you.
Man.
Thank you. This sounds great.
Yeah, we're great guys.
The wire details. No, so the next 5K is probably like play money somehow. So like maybe a vacation or like I don't know. I'm really into like decking out my bed and like 8 sleeps and fitness tracking and like that sort of thing. So semi play money there. And then probably allocate a little bit to like small angel investments, like tiny investments into companies and projects that I find interesting. And then probably whatever is left, call it 10K or so, into basic investment accounts.
So that was like the best answer we've gotten in like 50 or 60 episodes. Most people just say like, I'd probably just reinvest it into my business or put it into real estate. But like, I think it's really cool to hear from an entrepreneur's standpoint. It's like, I think about this too. When I get, let's say I go out and we make 10 grand. Like, I'm like, okay, can I take $500 and go buy a couple pairs of shoes? Like, yeah, I can. Yeah. Like, I can do that. And then I can take, and then I have $9,500. Like, what do I want to do with? I love how you broke it down. I think it's most of it ends up for us either going back into investing or back into the business. And until I tell myself like, dude, like, you know, spend some of the money or do something you want with it. And then so I have to tell myself that.
Yeah, you're on a kick like that like recently.
Yeah.
Like, dude, we got to use a little bit. Like, I know, dude. Whereas I've switched gears like, no, dude, it's in the freaking business.
It goes back.
We need a hot
seesaw, man.
Real
it's tub. I know. It's a real seesaw. So it's funny.
I have a quick one before we go, because you mentioned angel investing. Can you talk about, we hear this semi-frequently, but where would you go find other businesses that you want to dump money into? Or these, like, you know, I think Cody Sanchez does a great job of like showing and showcasing that she invests in a lot of stuff. But for you, where are you finding these things?
Yeah. I think it happens pretty organically. So because I work in real estate and tech and stuff, people will come by. Like, I mean, for instance, you guys are working on the vacation rental project. Maybe if you'll have me, and maybe if I had the money, I could toss something in. I don't know what the financials look like, et cetera. But it happens pretty organically, I'd say. So I wouldn't be surprised if, like, by way of the podcast, for me specifically, I mean, people ask me about how do you raise money to fund the business, and like, here's what I'm working on. Like, can you share advice and stuff? And so that's kind of when it happens for me, at least.
Yeah, that's what we're seeing too. I was just curious if there's a different way, but yeah, it's great.
Cool. Yeah. So question 3, Andrew, what has been your biggest mistake in your investing journey or your entrepreneurship journey, and how have you learned from it? I'm sure you haven't made any, so that's probably
none. Definitely.
Yeah, nothing to see here. Let's move on. No, I'd probably say like, this informs a lot about how I think about real estate today. I literally remember at the time when I bought that $96,000 home, my cousin, who was also getting into real estate at the time too, was like, you should buy this $125K home. It's like, $125K home. That home rented for like $1,100. My $96 $6,000 home rented for like $1,000. And it was like, yeah, you should buy this 96K home. It's a better home. It's a 3-bedroom, 2-bath, and not a 1-bath. That sort of thing. And I was like, no, like the cash flow on that is so low. Look at my spreadsheet. And so that drove me into buying the cheapest home that I couldn't keep. Like I don't own that home anymore, not because I don't want to, and it's worth more than I was fortunate. I made some good money on it, but it's worth more today than it was then. And it was really because I couldn't like maintain it. I would literally ask property managers to manage it for me, so I didn't have to self-manage. And they said, no, we cannot manage that home for you. And like, this should give you a sense of that home. So anyways, in investing, I probably would have said, I was a little bit too penny wise, I'd say. And I should have bought a nicer home and the subsequent homes too.
Cool. I like that
Makes
one
sense.
a lot. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's good. It's hard to admit that sometimes, but appreciate that.
Cheaper is not always better. We know that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Last
I
question.
do like cheap though, but yeah.
Yeah. So anyway.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Last question of the core 4 is, what do you want your legacy to be? So what gets you out of bed every morning to do what you do and, kind of fuels your underlying why?
Yeah. It's going to sound corny because everything I talked about is like financial security and things of that nature. But I have this sort of fundamental belief that as humans access financial security, it kind of opens up your mind to be able to work on higher leverage, more impactful, more interesting and things, and ultimately just live happier lives. And so I'd say for me, how do I empower and build a platform or spend time with people and kind of help them get closer to financial security? If I could be known for that one day when I croak, I think this would be good.
Totally. Yeah, I think it's a great answer. We strive to do it all every day. And I agree with you that financial security allows you to open your mind. You don't have to work from a place of desperation. And
Yep.
I think a desperate mind is one that can't think clearly. And if you can't think clearly, then you make emotional decisions, which could again put you in a more of a spiraling bad place. So financial, it's not everything, but it certainly helps. So great answer.
Like I don't think you need to have millions and millions of liquid cash in the bank, and I've never had that. Hopefully, I do one day, but I definitely do not today. It's some smaller number that you could pay rent, you could feed yourself, you could pay the utilities, and maybe have a small family and a house and things of that nature. And then I feel like once you get past that, then like you're sort of in a different world.
Totally. There's no. Ryan and I have kind of figured this out in a sense because we've hit a level of not full financial freedom, but we're getting on that path, and we realize like, to have $75 million, it doesn't really make us better people. One, that much happier. Two, it's like there's a level where it just doesn't get too much better. Like life can always get more convenient for you, but like I think that having millions is great, but not. There's a certain point where it's just diminishing returns, I think. So I love that answer.
I think also when you get to that point too, I don't know if I forget the quote, but it's like, it's given to people that know what to do with it, or they're going to utilize it for the right way. Like, I think if we get 75 million, it's like, you got to give a portion of that back and impact people's lives. And I don't know today what I would do with that money to impact people's lives, but I want to, right? So like, part of that's like in the planning process. And I think we all probably think of this too. It's like, once you get there and you're like, whoa, like now I have the power to help way more people than I could before. And that's way cooler for me. Once you're taken care of, like you and your family are all taken care of, but like we talk about LeBron's school all the time, where like just examples of that, where they're consistently giving back and uplifting people. It's pretty cool.
I think you do it. If you do it when you're poor, and you do it when you're starting to make money, and then you do it when you're financially free, you're going to do it when you're a multi-millionaire, right? So that's kind of like the whole idea is like, if you hoard all the money and you're so scarcity mindset, like you're going to be like that when you hit the lottery, so to speak, too. So like our idea of giving back here is like, we're almost training our mind. Like, let's tell people how we're doing along our journey with everyone else, so that when we really, really do make it, and we're going to, because we've put ourselves in rooms with people that are a hell of a lot smarter than us. If you do that, then you're going to be the same person, and that's kind of what I want to be, not like some somebody who's greedy the whole way, and then I'm going to be greedy at the top. So, we could talk about this for hours.
I know. Yeah. I dug us a little rabbit hole.
I can see that you guys have talked about it for hours. And it's a great topic.
We have. Yeah. So we'll get to the last drop.
Andrew, say you could go back to your 18-year-old self, look him in the mirror. Knowing what you know now and all the trials and tribulations and successes and failures you've been through, what advice would you give him if he would listen based on the world that you see it today?
Yeah, that's a good disclaimer at the end, if he would listen. I'd probably say it actually covers a lot of the stuff that we touched on earlier. It's like, follow what's interesting, and if it doesn't work out, it's fine. Like follow the next iteration of it, and then whenever you find something that's interesting, keep tugging at it, and then at some point you'll look back, and then you'll find that you've made a lot of progress. I think the younger self was obsessed with planning and knowing where he's going and things of that nature. And I'd probably say me today, it's more find something interesting, see how far you can get with it, and then trust that the rest will take care of itself.
It's a great answer. Sometimes you got to trust your gut. So, Andrew, this has been a pleasure, man. Just getting to know you. I can tell we're like-minded. I love your product. Maybe there's an opportunity for us to get involved in it at one point. I know that we're, always looking to partner with really cool people. So we want to thank you for coming on. And if people want to learn more about you, your story, your product, what's the best way for people to get in touch with you?
Yeah, likewise. The feeling is mutual, and I think we could go on for hours at the point too. But just doorvest.com if you want to check out Doorvest, or shoot me an email to andrew@doorvest.com. Happy to answer the questions if there's anything. I don't think I have the answers to everything, so probably we'll try to reroute and work out too.
Cool. Well, thank you again, Andrew. As Corey said, it was a pleasure getting to know you. Pleasure chatting. Just a good conversation with a good guy. So I think people are going to be coming your way. I mean, at least I know I would be if it was day one and I was trying to get my first property, right? So thanks again for everything, man. We look forward to staying in touch, and hope you have a great night.
Likewise. See ya.
Thanks for tuning in this week to the Weekly Juice Podcast. If you liked what you heard, please leave us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts, subscribe, and share with friends. The more ratings we get, the more ears we'll get on our show, and in turn, we'll be able to provide you with more high-quality guests. You can also find us on Instagram at Weekly Juice Pod, where we post daily tips and tricks and document our own journey towards financial freedom. Make sure to tune in every Wednesday to get your weekly juice.